Hey everyone, and welcome to 3030. My name is Pat Reinhardt from Conductor, and thank you so much for spending 30 minutes of your valuable time with me. We are going to talk about a lot of things that have happened over the last 30 days, but wanted to start by saying Happy New Year. I don't know if it's still okay to say that on the 19th of January. I think it is. But from that perspective, we're entering our 8th year doing 3030, and I'm super grateful for that. This is my favorite part of my job. I know I say that every month here. But year 8 of this, and I'm really excited about that. Thank you to everyone who comes, every month, and everyone who emails, and even for first timers. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's get into it and see what we're going to be talking about today, right? So Google's helpful content update and link spam updates have finally completed. I'm going to talk about what I am seeing and hearing around the industry. They only finished rolling out on the 12th, but from that perspective, there's still a lot to talk about there. Of course, cool kid conversation. I'm going to talk about ChatGPT, AI, and what it means for search. I have gotten so many questions, so many questions about this. I have a perspective. I've had a lot of fun conversations. Did a webinar last week with colleague Stefan Bajayo. We talked a little bit about it there, but wanted to get a little bit more specific there. We're also going to talk about not building your site on bad links and what long-term effects that can have. I know, shocking topic for me to be talking about, and also talking about keeping your head clean. And that is the header section of your site and why you need to do that. There's a lot of talk that's been happening around the industry around that. So let's get into it because we only have 30 minutes. Number one, Google's helpful content update and link spam update have finally completed after many days. So on January 12th, both of them concluded after an extended rollout. Why was there an extended rollout? Because it was the holidays. And when you look at it, for the helpful content update, it took 30 days or 39 days, and the link spam update took about 30 days. Again, this is because over the course of the holidays, there were some security issues that Google was mentioning that they couldn't get past because people were away for the holidays. Probably was a bad idea to roll it out that time of year anyway, which again, historically they do not, but they did do it. But from that perspective, they are done rolling out. And as you can see to the right, like what I'm seeing and hearing just at a high level, and of course, not to be obvious, there's a lot more volatility than usual, with these rollouts than other rollouts and other algorithm updates, right? Like when you look here, you're seeing a lot more spikes in, this is SEMrush's sensor. And as everyone who has joined the show, before, as I've said over the years, this is a heightened level of volatility from last year. If I showed this chart last year, all these big spikes and a lot of this green, or most of this green would be in the yellow, and a lot of these spikes would be in red, because SEMrush updated the way that, that they measured volatility, given the sustained volatility that Google has been experiencing. So my prediction from last month is ringing true. We are seeing more volatility than usual. So I could already thumbs up that one probably. But from that perspective, you can see that we have not seen a lot of peaks like this that actually make it into the high level. So as you can tell, there's a lot of movement that's happening, right? Ton of movement that's happening all over in a lot of different sectors. Another trend that I'm seeing, of course, because of the link spam update and their introduction of the spam brain AI that looks for people who are buying links and sites that only exist to pass link equity, which is what those folks are selling. I have seen the loss of a lot of referring domains for, I'll show you some visualizations after this, but have not seen a lot of decrease in authority. As we all know, domain authority is not technically a real metric, but it is something where you can measure, the strength of your site, and that's totally fine. But, Google doesn't use it as a ranking factor. But from that perspective, during this, I saw losses in referring domains overall for just about every site. And what is that? That is Google dropping crappy sites from their index, based on a lot of things. But I think the link spam update did have teeth. And I think that is something that is interesting. But I think it actually kind of leans to the fact that the system is working the way they want it to, because most sites that I was looking at, their domain authority scores did not change, but the total number of their referring domains changed, and by the hundreds or even thousands in some instances. So that's something to take into account as well. Retail sites got hit on a category level, but not on an article level, which was surprising to me. I thought the helpful content update was actually going to knock down a lot of like retail blogs and things of that nature, where they're just answering questions maybe with one or two sentences. I did not see that. I saw a lot of category movement, and I'll get into that in a minute. And then also sites that use AI for content seem to be fine. I haven't seen sites that clearly use and have stated that they use AI, like Bankrate, which we will talk about in a few. Clearly nothing happening there. And again, we will hit on that point in when we talk about ChatGPT. But to get into some visualizations here, so this is a retail site that had a little bit of a roller coaster, a big bucket event for them. And as you can see, here as they dipped towards, and again, this is not traffic, this is rankings. So obviously you see right around Christmas, like this dip, this is rankings, not traffic. And then they came right back up, which is super interesting to see. And what I had thought for this site, this is a site that I have been watching. I know the owner of the company very, very well. And, we've worked together for a very long time, over 10 years. So I know the site like the back of my hand. Usually, what I was worried about with this site was their blog traffic, their blog sites getting killed. And when I first started seeing declines, right around when the helpful content update started rolling around the 5th, which, as you can see, is right here. I was convinced that it was because the blog content was thin, or like they were asking and answering questions, which there's nothing wrong with that. But the way that they were doing it was very thin in some places, and I thought that he would have to go into a big effort to combine content, things of that nature. Not the case. And I actually confirmed this across a lot of other retailers. Was that what I'm seeing is on the category level, right? On the category level, there is there were shifts, and it wasn't like major shifts, like things fell off the face of the earth, like something was ranking at number 2 and it went to number 40, or it went out of the top 100. What I saw was a big shakeup in the top 3 or 4 results, where something would be ranking number 1 and it would shift to number 2, or it would shift to number 3, right? And then that happened across the board. And I saw a lot of sites that some went up, some went down, but ultimately what it was a lot of page 1 movement. And not necessarily in the same but it was on the higher level category pages. Like if you sell, let's just say you sell wetsuits for a living. I always use the wetsuit example. Like, let's say, which is strange because I don't scuba dive or surf or anything like that. It just popped into my head one day, like 5 years ago, and I constantly use it. So from that perspective, like say your site selling wetsuits and you were writing about like sizing charts and, heat charts and things of that nature, like what level water, like what temperature, temperature charts and things of that nature. And you were just answering questions like how do you fill a scuba tank, things like that, right? Like, and you're just answering it very thinly. I thought that was going to get hit. But what actually got hit was things like men's wetsuits, like women's wetsuits, like shorty wetsuits, children's wetsuits, like those categorical, more broad terms. So it was interesting because I thought the helpful content update would have targeted like the article content more, but I feel that it targeted categorical content a lot more, and there was a big shift in page 1. So from that perspective, it would be from that perspective, that's something that I've seen that I've seen on that on that side. So that's just one example here. This is an aggregator site that's a 7% increase in sessions, which apparently I cannot spell. I put equates here. I don't know what that means. To almost 200,000 additional visits. Supposed to be equates. From that perspective, while the chart doesn't look like, oh my God, but when you think that that's a lot of visits here, since this update rolled out, which you're looking from about here to here. And as you can see, that like the increase is pretty much the size of the cursor, but that is a significant rise because that marker is 2.5 million. And as it heads to 3 million, you're seeing almost 200,000 more visits on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, excuse me. So that's a lot, that's a lot of visits, right? So I think from that perspective, so a lot of the bigger sites do well. And again, does this site use AI, written content? I can't say. I'm sure they do to a degree, but from that perspective, didn't seem to be impacted. And I thought that this one would see a little bit of a decline as they've been having a good time and a good positive experience through a lot of these updates. The next one, which is what I saw across just about every site that I looked at sites of all different shapes and sizes. As you can see here, you got some with referring domains over 700,000, some in 162,000, some in 18,000, 42,000. Like smaller sites, of course, in the hundreds, look the same way. But this is the trend that I see, that referring domains declined from December to January in just about every single case that I looked at. But authority did not change. I did not see any instances where authority changed by more than a point or two, one way or the other. But I would say that 90% of the sites, I checked like 50 or 60. I just went through them because I started pulling the thread on this. But this is definitely something that the link spam update impacted, in my opinion, is that from December to January, a lot of sites lost a lot of referring domains, but it was all crappy sites, right? Like it's all the sites that people are buying links from, like directories and things of that nature. I think Google cut a ton of sites, or filtered a ton of sites out of the index, with Spam Brain AI going on. And I think we are going to continue to see this for a month or two as the new technology kind of goes through and continues to clean some stuff up. But to me, this is proof that this is also most likely doing what Google intended, which was get rid of sites that are not high quality, and for sites that are doing, linking the right way, they're not getting penalized for losing sites as authority stayed the same. But I did have a couple of conversations with folks who got absolutely killed over the last few weeks. One in the financial sector, one in the health sector. Where they lost a lot of referring domains, but their authority kind of tanked, but their rankings and their traffic went through the floor, unfortunately. And we went through the sites together and determined that it probably had a lot to do with the link spam update. Just knowing that they were actively buying links, and they knew they shouldn't, but they did. And they've been doing it for a long time. And something that we'll talk about a little bit later today about links as well is that like those are just because you fix something quickly doesn't mean that you can run away from that system that you've built over all those years. So from that perspective, keep that in mind. But this is another trend that I saw with this. So overall, a lot of movement in the top, like 1 to 4, was probably what I saw most. I didn't see any sites completely collapse. I didn't see any sites go through the roof. Certainly the aggregator site I showed you before had another good turn, this time around. But from that perspective, that's what I'm seeing and hearing. Confirm this with a lot of people around the industry. They're seeing the same thing. And so I think that these updates were big. They definitely shook up the top of the top of the SERP. And I think we're going to start, continue to see some rumbles here. As you can see, like there was actually another kind of spike, yesterday, that people are talking about. So, which is probably just, again, Google turning the dial up, turning the dial down as they get data back, as these updates have now been completely assimilated into the main algorithm. So we'll see what happens, right? We'll see what happens. So from that perspective, that's what I'm seeing and hearing. I'm going to move into this one, which will probably be the next 10 minutes or so. Let's talk about, ChatGPT and AI, what it means for search. So, I'm sure everyone here has used this already. I think the conversation around AI has been solid for years. I think everyone is talking about this right now and saying that it's going to kill SEO. This is where people are going to go, instead of Google, which is ludicrous. But at the same time, I think one thing that I need to just state is that SEOs have been using automation and certain types of AI for a long time, and mostly to take care of mundane tasks and such things as keyword research, getting a list of keywords, keyword categorization, in masktag, creation, pulling and pivoting data, creating code, right? Writing macros to create code and things of that nature. Jasper is better. It most certainly is, in my opinion, as well. But I can think from this, but I think here, this technology happens to be very public right now, right? And I think that's why things like Jasper and other AI programs aren't as widely used, or probably don't have the buzz around it that ChatGPT has right now. And I think from that perspective, that's why you're seeing so much attention on this all of a sudden, right? But like technologies like this should absolutely become a key tool in your toolbox moving forward to cut down on mundane tasks, right? We created, Stefan and I and our professional services team here at Conductor, created a web app here that we use behind the scenes to pull and pivot data, and it all runs on Python, it all runs on automation, it all runs with some AI on top of it to help bring back things. So this is not something new that people are using. This one just has to be super public, and it does work. It does work well, and I will say. And from that perspective, listen, I even asked it, like, are you going to kill SEO? And it gave me a really nice answer that made me feel good, right? Will this become sentient at some time and come after us all? Probably. But I think at the end of the day, you have to remember that, this is something that should be seen as a tool, not as a replacement for Google, not yet anyway. So looking into a couple of things, the interesting part about this also is the public, the public investment in this from Microsoft. $10 billion is going to be invested in ChatGPT creator OpenAI, which is really interesting. And I think when you see things like that, and it's not something where it's an exclusive. And the co-founders have talked about ChatGPT working much like AWS. Like people can build tools off of it. That's what they want. They want platforms like Conductor to adopt its technology and build it into tools, and layer it into insights. And I think when you see things like this, it's super interesting. And I think from that perspective, it's something to consider. Note here on Jasper. Thank you, Joseph. That Jasper uses OpenAI is better because the user interface is faster to use. The templates are an example of that. Thank you for that clarification, Joseph. I appreciate that. And moving from there, I also just want to note that Google is not going anywhere, everybody. Google is not going anywhere. While certainly their market share will erode to a point. We talked last month about Instagram and TikTok, becoming bigger things, and starting with the younger generations using that to start their search. But I just want to say, Google is not going anywhere. I've had so many people talk to me, and I've seen so many opinion pieces out there, which is totally fine. Talk about this is what the minute this is what's going to happen. They're going to this is going to be Google. People are just going to use things like ChatGPT, and no one's going to use Google anymore. And I think that couldn't be further from the truth. Again, I see ChatGPT and AI, things like this, and like Jasper, as more tools for us to use to help automate mundane tasks, and become more efficient. Help with productivity. But I don't see it taking over Google. I don't see it becoming what search is. I mean, maybe when they do plug it into the internet finally, it'll become a certain interface like that. But I don't see it putting Google out of business. Let me put it that way. I don't see that happening at all. So from that perspective, just know that Google's not going anywhere. So I don't think anyone's, I don't think SEO is dying by any chance, in the imagination. But you also have to remember that where this is at right now, right? Which is that, even, it can't fact check. Right, even the co-founder Sam Altman wrote that that this tool is incredibly limited, and good enough at some things to create misleading impression of greatness. And I think that's the perfect line. Good enough at some things to create a misleading impression of greatness. Right, meaning that you put something in and it puts down, and it gives you input back, and it looks great. It's like, hey, this sounds good, but it can't fact check. It can't actually tell you that the facts that it pulled back are correct. And he also said that it's great it's not reliable for factual answers to questions. So for that, it means humans aren't going anywhere from right now. And if you look at this post from Glenn Gabe that I came across on LinkedIn, he said that the CNET article had this. Had this disclaimer on it that said, we are currently reviewing the story for accuracy. If we find errors, we will update and issue corrections. And what you think, it's like this was an AI written article. And again, it can't fact check. And that's why, in the webinar last month with Stefan, I had said that I believe that we will go from, we're going to go from content writers to seeing a lot more content editors, right? I think people will start with tools like this, like, hey, ChatGPT, write me a content brief for whatever, right? And it spits something out for you. And I think that brief will then be sent to a person to edit and fact check. And to me, that's a good efficiency, right? That's a way to increase productivity by having a starting point. I do not think that people should be putting things into ChatGPT and then posting it on their site. It's borderline dangerous, because the facts of it a lot of the times are not true. But I think it does provide a good starting point, right? And from that perspective, finding a good writer or a good editor, it's not this humongous cost or anything like that. And I don't think that people are going to shy away from it completely. But I do think you're going to see technologies. I do think you're going to see companies use it as a starting point and then send it to someone to and edit that, which to me is totally fine. And I think Google thinks that's totally fine too, right? And also, this stuff like this is not just for SEO. It could be a powerful productivity tool, right? From this perspective, I've summarized call notes with it and asked to write follow-up email and then edit it, because it wasn't a perfect thing that came by, but it saved me a lot of time of just getting the base email back that I would have rechecked anyway. And it was easy, and it makes it easy to do that and just become more productive, spend less time on mundane tasks, which is what the point of automation and AI is, in my opinion. And then again, reworking emails to change tone, to clean up grammar. And then also find out details about another company or features or product or things of that nature. There's a lot of things like that you can use it. So don't think of it as just an SEO tool, right? Think of it as a productivity tool. There's a lot that you can do with it, right? And from that perspective, for SEO purposes, of course, everyone has their lists, but there's a lot of things that you can use it for that you should try out, right? To create keyword lists. Hey, ChatGPT, give me 50 keywords about mortgage rates or things of that nature, right? You can categorize keyword lists, hey, ChatGPT, this list, categorize this list for me. It can write code for you. It can write schema markup. I've seen it. It writes it well. You can create macros with it. Again, create V1 of content briefs based on keywords. Hey, here's a content brief that I had it write, again, about wetsuits, because that's apparently what I talk about. And it wrote this great content brief, but at the same point, it needs help, right? It needs editing. Create tags both as one-offs and in mass based on keywords, categories. Hey, ChatGPT, give me 20 meta descriptions about 20 different meta descriptions about men's wetsuits, things of that nature, because you have multiple pages, right? And I think there's 100 other use cases too, but from that perspective, it all comes down to how you use it, right? And from here, you can see here that Bankrate is, there's a lot of conversation around Bankrate right now that they use AI, and they call it out. This article was generated using automation technology and thoroughly edited and fact checked by an editor and our editorial staff. I don't think that's bad. And when you look at Google's response to it, Danny Sullivan said, we haven't said AI content is bad. What they've said pretty clear is that content written primarily for search engines rather than humans is the issue. That's what they're focused on, right? If someone fires up 100 humans to write content just to rank, or fires up a spinner or an AI, it's the same issue. It's all about the editing, right? It's all about the editing. And I think that's the biggest point. And that's something that you should consider. Don't think of this as oh, this is so horrible, I can't believe people are doing this. Think of this as, okay, this is something that I can use as a starting point, and then it needs to be thoroughly edited. And I think that that's totally fine. And as you can see here, Google also thinks this is totally fine. So my opinion, this is time saved, but you need to use it correctly. And that's my overarching opinion on this, right? Is that this can really help you save a ton of time. You can use it. You can use it to make your teams more efficient, but you have to make sure you use it appropriately, and you have to make sure that you use it in the right methods. Because from that perspective, it is a lot of there's a lot of people who will abuse this, and I'm sure have already abused this. But if you want to do it the right way, use it as a starting point. Use it to automate mundane tasks and just to make you move faster. Because as everyone knows, my big thing with SEO is that it's all about agility. It's all about how fast you can move, how much you can test, success, how much you can learn, and then you can implement more. And the more you implement and the more you learn from those implementations, the better your campaigns will do. And this could be a very important tool in your arsenal, right? So moving on, a couple more things, few more minutes. So don't build your sites on bad links. So on Mastodon, Google's John Mueller was helping someone that was having that site got killed by bad linking practices. And something that he said stood out to me, and I'm just going to read it here. If you've built the foundation of your site on bad links for a longer period of time, that will have a lasting effect, even if you suddenly fix some things, right? And he talks about cardboard or something, which is totally fine. But that's something that I think people really don't understand, is that if your site is built on links that you've purchased over many, many years, and all of a sudden you say, well, I disavowed those links or things of that nature. You say it's like, listen, I've had them for so long and it's working, and then Google comes up and says, hey, these don't work anymore, you are screwed. You are screwed for a very, very, very long time, because Google is getting better at identifying this and is being more public about how they're getting better at identifying this. And I really think people need to listen. I had a conversation earlier this week with someone who was just saying, this is all BS, right? There's absolutely nothing wrong with buying links and things of that nature. I've never had any problems or things of that nature. And I'm not saying that is 100% untrue all the time. It's just a bad practice. And ultimately, Google is looking for people doing this. And if a big part of your strategy is, I'm dumping X amount of dollars into buying X amount of links every month, and the people that you are buying those links are running these sites that Google is actively searching for with now with an AI, looking for sites that solely exist to pass link equity, which is what all of link builders like when people who sell links, that's what they do. They own hundreds and hundreds of sites that they put links to your site on based on certain categories, and they pump them back to you. That's how a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them get links back to your site. And of course, there's some companies that do the hard work and all that, which is totally fine. But from that perspective, that's how most link building works. And that's what a lot of sites are built on. And that's what Google is looking for. And I think a lot of people still do things in a really, do things in this way. And I don't think it's it's still something that everyone has to pay attention to. I see it all the time when people get screwed when Google does. And this is saying that you can't just disavow something and expect it to be fixed, right? It could take you years to dig out of this. So the sooner you stop those bad practices, the better off you will be. Last thing, keeping your head clean. So from that perspective, there's been a lot of conversation around the head section on your site, right? And what should go in it. A great rundown and search engine roundtable. When you guys get the deck, you should click there and go to the site. Barry always does a good job with conversations like this. And I know we only have a couple minutes left, so I'm going to go quick here. But the main points are keep JavaScript out of the head section, or at least, keep it out of the top of the head section. Make sure it's completely separated because it tends to break things. The content position does not matter on the site. That was something that was also talked about. HTML, all the HTML headers should be on top. Again, JavaScript elements should be moved below the HTML headers, but not to the body, but rather below critical elements that need to be discovered in the header section, right? Test with the rendering tool in Google Search Console to make sure JavaScript isn't messing up anything, because that's what's happening. It's broken syntax is really what this is all about, and that can cause other elements to break. And there's actually been a lot of people talking about this, that they put JavaScript in their head section. It had a broken syntax, or it had JavaScript that broke something else, and then the entire page didn't render, and the person didn't even know about it, because they didn't use, they thought everything was working fine because tags were firing, but Google actually wasn't able to render the page properly, which basically rendered. The only reason they caught it is because their pages started to get de-indexed, and they couldn't understand why. So make sure that everything is clean and tight. You don't want JavaScript, kind of messing it up. But John Mueller again, once again said, this is in short, avoid making the head brittle if you care about those SEO settings, and consider moving them to the top of the head so that things get done. So with that said, I know we are at time. Everyone, we talked a lot about algorithms today, but the only algorithm that matters is what your customers love and what they want. And if you give that to them, you will enjoy traffic and you will enjoy SEO success for long periods of time. So everyone, thank you so much for joining me. As always, spending 30 minutes of your valuable time with me. I'm grateful grateful. I'm humbled. This is my favorite part of my job, and I couldn't do it without you. Thank you all so much. Happy New Year. I promise that's the last time I'll say it for this year, and we will see you next month.